The morning the power lines came down, Marcus and Joel were already 30 hours into their monthly drill. No fire, no stove, no candles. Just insulation, layers, and discipline. The townspeople thought they were paranoid. Some laughed. Others rolled their eyes when the brothers walked into the general store with their checklists and their vacuum-sealed emergency kits. Preparing for the apocalypse again? Old Henderson would joke, leaning against the counter with his coffee. Marcus would smile politely. Joel would just nod. They didn't explain anymore. Explaining never changed minds. Only results did. Their cabin sat 3 miles outside Ridgefield, a remote town in northern Montana where winters weren't just cold, they were ruthless. The kind of cold that turned moisture in your breath into ice crystals before it even left your mouth. The kind that made your car battery die overnight if you forgot to plug in the block heater. The brothers had lived there for 6 years, ever since their parents passed and left them the property. Marcus was 32, a former park ranger with a methodical mind and an obsession with systems. Joel was 28, quieter, more instinctive, but equally committed to their survival protocols. The drill had started 3 years ago after a close call. A sudden storm had knocked out power for 4 days. They'd burned through their firewood in 2, thinking the grid would come back any minute. It didn't. By day 3, they were cold, exhausted, and making dangerous decisions, burning furniture, opening the door too often, wasting batteries on unnecessary light. They survived, but barely. Afterward, Marcus sat down with a notebook and wrote a single question at the top of the page. What if we had no fire at all? That question became a system, and that system became a drill. Once a month for 48 hours, they would shut off every heat source in the cabin and practice their protocol. No flames, no electricity for warmth, just passive insulation, body heat management, and strict rationing of light and power. The first time, they failed miserably. Joel got so cold he couldn't sleep. Marcus made the mistake of sweating during a task and paid for it with violent shivering an hour later. But they learned. They adjusted. They refined. By the 3rd year, the drill was airtight. They knew exactly how to layer clothing to trap warm air without sweating. They knew how to seal drafts with rolled towels and duct tape. They knew how to rotate tasks to keep blood moving without overexertion. They knew how to share body heat efficiently during sleep. They knew how to keep batteries warm by storing them close to their core. And most importantly, they knew how to ration light. 3 AA batteries could power their LED headlamp for 12 hours if used sparingly. 3 cells, 2 nights. That was the math. But nobody in Ridgefield understood. To them, the drill was paranoia, a waste of time. "You've got a wood stove right there," Henderson said once, gesturing at the black iron stove in the corner of the store. "Why torture yourselves?" Marcus had tried to explain, about decision fatigue, about panic, about how practicing discomfort made you calm when real emergencies hit. Henderson just laughed and rang up their batteries. The storm started on a Tuesday afternoon. The sky turned the color of old concrete, and the wind picked up in sharp, erratic gusts. Marcus was outside checking the propane tank when the first flakes started falling. They weren't the soft, drifting kind. They were hard and fast, driven horizontal by the wind. He pulled his hood tighter and jogged back to the cabin. "It's coming in fast," he said, stomping snow off his boots. Joel looked up from the kitchen table where he was reviewing their supply inventory. "How fast?" Marcus glanced out the window. The trees were already bending. "Fast enough. We should button up." They spent the next hour securing the cabin. Marcus dragged extra firewood onto the porch and covered it with a tarp. Joel checked the seal on every window and door. They filled extra water containers from the well pump outside while they still had the chance. They charged every device they owned, phones, battery packs, the emergency radio. By 5 p.m., the wind was howling. By 6, the snow was so thick you couldn't see the tree line. By 7, the lights flickered twice, then went out. The darkness was immediate and total. Outside, the wind screamed against the cabin walls. Joel stood in the middle of the main room, waiting for his eyes to adjust. "Breaker?" he asked. Marcus was already at the window, looking out at the neighbor's place a quarter-mile away. No lights. "Grid's down," he said quietly. He pulled out his phone and checked the service. 1 bar. Barely. He opened the weather app. The update was 2 hours old, but the forecast was clear. Blizzard warning. Sustained winds 30 to 40 miles per hour with gusts up to 60. Wind chills between -20 and -30. Duration 12 to 18 hours. Joel clicked on his headlamp, a single LED on the lowest setting. The thin beam cut through the dark. "We've got the wood stove," he said. Marcus nodded slowly, thinking. "We do. But if the power's out for a day, maybe 2, we'll burn through wood fast. And we don't know if we can get more." Joel frowned. "We've got enough for 3 days, easy." Marcus turned to face him. "What if it's longer? What if the roads don't clear? What if we can't get out?" The wind answered with a violent gust that rattled the door. There was a long silence. Then Joel said it. "The drill." Marcus met his eyes. "The drill," he confirmed. It wasn't a decision they made lightly. The cabin was already cold. The temperature inside had dropped to 52 degrees Fahrenheit in the hour since the power cut. Outside, with the wind, it was near 0. The wind chill calculator Marcus had memorized told him that 0 degrees with 15-mile-per-hour wind felt like -19. With 30-mile-per-hour gusts, it felt even colder. Exposed skin could freeze in 30 minutes. But inside, protected from wind, the real enemy wasn't frostbite. It was hypothermia. And hypothermia could happen even above 40 degrees if you got wet, if you stayed still too long, if you made the wrong choices. They stood in the dim light of Joel's headlamp and reviewed the protocol. Step 1. Assess your baseline. Are you dry? Are you warm enough to start? Any injuries? Both were dry. Both were layered adequately. Base layer, insulating mid-layer, outer shell. No injuries. Step 2. Secure your shelter. Seal drafts. Minimize heat loss. They'd already done this, but they checked again. Every window seal, every door gap. They used rolled towels along the bottom of the exterior door and duct-taped plastic sheeting over the 2 windows that leaked the most air. It wasn't perfect, but it would slow the heat bleed. Step 3. Establish your safe zone. In the drill, this was always the back bedroom, the smallest room in the cabin, farthest from exterior walls, with only one small window. They moved their sleeping bags, their supply kit, and their water into the room. They hung a heavy blanket over the doorway to create an extra barrier. The room was maybe 10 by 12 feet, small enough to trap body heat, large enough to move around if needed. Step 4. Check your supplies. Marcus opened the kit. 3 LED headlamps, 1 larger LED lantern. 12 AA batteries total, 9 in the kit, 3 already in devices. Matches and a lighter just in case. A first aid kit. A small camping stove with 2 fuel canisters sealed and stored separately. Protein bars, dried fruit. Instant coffee. A steel thermos. 2 emergency bivy sacks, thin mylar blankets designed to reflect body heat. Joel counted the batteries again. If we're disciplined, we can make 3 cells last 2 nights. Marcus nodded. That was the theory. 1 headlamp on the absolute lowest setting, used only when necessary. The rest stored warm, close to their bodies. Lithium batteries performed better in cold, but alkaline cells, the kind they had, lost capacity fast below freezing. Keeping them warm was essential. Step 5. Establish your routine. Movement prevents cold, but too much movement means sweat, and sweat means death. They'd learned this the hard way. The trick was micro-tasks, small, controlled activities that kept blood flowing without overheating. Stretching, organizing supplies, rotating positions, hand exercises, never enough to break a sweat. Never so little that you went stiff. By 9 p.m., the cabin temperature had dropped to 43 degrees. The back bedroom was slightly warmer, maybe 46, but still cold enough to be dangerous over time. They put on their second insulating layer. Fleece pants over base layer leggings, a down vest over their mid-layer jackets, wool socks, beanies, gloves without fingers so they could still use their hands. They looked ridiculous, but comfort wasn't the goal. Survival was. They sat on the floor of the bedroom, backs against the wall, sharing body heat. Joel clicked off his headlamp. The darkness swallowed them. "Talk me through it," Joel said quietly. Marcus knew what he meant. The checklist. The mental map that kept panic at bay. "Right now we're dry and layered," Marcus began. "Core temp is stable. We've minimized heat loss in the room. Our water is accessible. Our light is rationed. We have food. We have a backup heat source if we need it." He paused. "We're in control." Joel exhaled slowly. "We're in control," he repeated. It was a mantra they'd used in every drill. Words to anchor the mind when the body wanted to panic. Outside, the wind hit the cabin with the force of a freight train. The walls creaked. Something metallic, maybe the gutter, tore loose and clattered across the roof. Joel tensed. "That's going to be a problem," he muttered. Marcus didn't answer. There was nothing they could do about it now. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the storm. Then Marcus said, "First check in an hour. We assess how we feel, adjust layers if needed, drink water, do some movement." Joel grunted agreement. An hour felt like a long time in the dark. At 10 p.m., Marcus clicked on the headlamp for 30 seconds. Just long enough to see each other's faces, check for signs of trouble. Joel's lips weren't blue, his hands weren't shaking. Good signs. Marcus poured water from the thermos. It was still warm from the last time they'd filled it before the power cut, and they each took a few sips. Not too much. Peeing in the cold meant leaving the safe zone, exposing skin, wasting heat. They did 10 minutes of stretches, arm circles, leg lifts, torso twists, enough to get the blood moving. Then they sat back down, turned off the light, and waited. By midnight, the cold was inside their clothes. Not painful yet, but present. A persistent pressure that made you want to curl up and stay still. That was the danger. Staying still felt safer, felt warmer in the moment, but it let the cold settle into your core. They forced themselves to move every 20 minutes. Small movements. Shift your weight, flex your toes, squeeze your hands into fists, rock gently side to side. It felt absurd, but it worked. The body generated heat through motion, even tiny motion. At 1 a.m., Joel spoke into the dark. "You think Henderson's got power?" Marcus almost laughed. "If he does, he's running his generator and burning through fuel." Joel was quiet for a moment. "You think he'd laugh if he knew we were doing this right now?" Marcus considered. "Probably, until he runs out of fuel and we're still warm." It was a small comfort, but it helped. They weren't suffering for nothing. They were practicing, testing, proving. The second night would be the hardest. By then, the body's reserves would be lower. The mind would be tired, mistakes would come easier. But they weren't there yet. They had 12 hours until dawn, then a full day, then another night. The math was simple. The execution was everything. At 2 a.m., Marcus checked the temperature with a small keychain thermometer he kept in his pocket. 39 degrees. The room was losing heat faster now. The storm outside had intensified, pulling warmth through every microscopic gap in the walls. He didn't tell Joel the number. It wouldn't help. At 3 a.m., Joel started shivering, not violently, but consistently. Marcus noticed immediately. "Hey," he said quietly. "Come here." They repositioned so they were sitting side by side, shoulders touching, legs overlapping slightly. The shared contact made a difference. Body heat didn't just radiate, it transferred through touch. Marcus wrapped one arm around Joel's shoulders. "We're halfway to dawn," he said. Joel nodded, teeth chattering slightly. "Halfway," he echoed. At 4 a.m., Marcus made a decision. He clicked on the headlamp, pulled out 2 of the emergency bivy sacks, and draped one over each of them like a blanket. The mylar crinkled loudly, reflecting their body heat back at them. It wasn't much, but within 10 minutes, the shivering slowed. Joel's breathing steadied. "That's better," he murmured. Marcus left the light on for another minute, checking Joel's face carefully. His eyes were clear. His speech wasn't slurred. No signs of hypothermia yet, just normal cold response. He clicked off the light. They sat wrapped in crinkly silver, looking like emergency astronauts, and waited for dawn. When the first gray light finally seeped through the window, they both felt it. A tiny shift in morale. Darkness amplified cold. Light, even weak winter light, made it bearable. Marcus checked his phone. 6:43 a.m. The storm was still raging, but the forecast had updated. The blizzard warning was extended. Another 12 to 18 hours, possibly longer. He showed Joel the screen. Joel rubbed his face with both hands. "So we're looking at another night." Marcus nodded. "At least one." They spent the morning moving carefully through their tasks. First, they had to deal with basic needs. Peeing meant leaving the safe zone, going to the main room where the temperature was now in the low 30s, and using the makeshift facility they'd set up, a bucket with a trash bag liner. They'd practiced this in the drill. You moved fast. You kept your core covered. You didn't expose skin longer than absolutely necessary. Marcus went first. The main room felt like a freezer. His breath fogged thick in the beam of his headlamp. He finished in under 2 minutes and hurried back to the bedroom. Next, they assessed their physical state. Fingers and toes. Any numbness? Any tingling? Both reported normal sensation. Skin. Any gray or white patches? None. Mental clarity. Could they think clearly? Remember the steps? Make decisions? Marcus asked Joel to recite the protocol backward. Joel did it perfectly. Good sign. They were managing. They ate a protein bar each and drank more water. Staying hydrated was critical. Dehydration made you colder, made your blood thicker, made everything harder. By noon, the cabin temperature was 35 degrees. The bedroom was maybe 38. They added their outer shells, heavy winter jackets they'd kept in reserve. The bulk made movement awkward, but the warmth was worth it. They also put on their neck gaiters and pulled their beanies lower. Heat escaped fastest from the head and neck. Covering those areas made a measurable difference. They did another round of micro-movements. This time, they added a new task, reorganizing the supply kit. Taking items out, checking them, putting them back. It was busy work, but it kept their hands active and their minds occupied. At 2 p.m., something changed. Joel stood up to stretch and stumbled slightly. Marcus looked up sharply. "You okay?" Joel blinked, steadying himself against the wall. "Yeah, just dizzy for a second." Marcus watched him carefully. Dizziness could be nothing. Could be from standing too fast after sitting too long. Or it could be the first whisper of hypothermia. The condition was insidious. It crept in slowly, affecting the brain before you realized anything was wrong. Confusion, clumsiness, slurred speech, poor decision-making. By the time you noticed, you were already compromised. "Sit down," Marcus said, his voice calm but firm. Joel sat. Marcus clicked on the headlamp and moved closer, studying his brother's face. "Look at me. How do you feel right now? Don't think about it. Just answer." Joel met his eyes. Cold. Tired. A little lightheaded. Marcus nodded. "Hands." Joel held them out. Steady. No tremors. "Squeeze my hands." Joel squeezed. "Good grip." "Say your full name and today's date." Joel did, clearly and without hesitation. Marcus exhaled. Not hypothermia. Not yet. But a warning sign. He pulled out the checklist he kept in his jacket pocket. A laminated card with the hypothermia symptoms they'd memorized. Mild hypothermia, shivering, numbness, confusion, fatigue. Moderate, violent shivering, loss of coordination, slurred speech, irrational behavior. Severe, no shivering, extreme confusion, unconsciousness. Joel was showing early fatigue and mild dizziness, but nothing else. Still, Marcus wasn't taking chances. "We're adjusting the protocol," he said. Joel frowned. "What do you mean?" Marcus was already moving. "We're adding a heat source." He went to the supply kit and pulled out the small camping stove and one fuel canister. Joel watched, uncertain. "We said no fire." Marcus shook his head. "We said no fire unless necessary. Right now, it's necessary." He set up the stove in the corner of the room, away from any fabric or flammable materials. He filled the steel thermos with water from their supply. Then he lit the stove. The tiny blue flame hissed to life, and set the thermos on top. "We're making warm fluids. Not hot, just warm. Enough to raise your core temp a few degrees." Joel started to protest, but Marcus cut him off. "This is part of the drill too, knowing when to adapt. We're not compromising the system. We're using it intelligently." The water took 8 minutes to warm. Marcus monitored it carefully, checking the temperature by touch. When it was warm enough to drink without burning, he turned off the stove. They each drank half the thermos slowly, letting the warmth spread through their chests. The effect was immediate. Joel's color improved. His alertness sharpened. "Better?" Marcus asked. Joel nodded. "Better." But the fuel was gone now. One canister used. They had one left, and Marcus wanted to save it for the second night if possible. He made a note on the checklist. Hour 22, dizzy spell, warm fluids administered, condition improved. Documentation wasn't just for analysis later. It was a tool to keep the mind sharp now, to remind them they were in control, following a plan, not just reacting to chaos. The afternoon stretched long and gray. The storm showed no signs of weakening. If anything, the wind had gotten worse. They could hear debris hitting the cabin. Branches, maybe shingles, hard to tell. At one point, there was a massive crack, like a tree splitting. Joel jumped. Marcus didn't. He'd heard that sound before. Somewhere in the woods, a frozen tree had snapped under the weight of ice and wind. It was a reminder of what was happening outside, a brutal, indifferent process that would kill them if they made the wrong choices. At 4 p.m., they did another assessment. Both were managing. Joel's dizzy spell hadn't returned. They were tired, yes, and cold, yes, but stable. They'd been running the drill for over 40 hours now, and they were still functional. That was success. Marcus allowed himself a moment of pride, but only a moment. They still had another night ahead, and nights were always harder. At 6 p.m., as the light began to fail again, they prepared. They checked their clothing layers. Everything still dry, no sweat, no moisture. They checked their batteries. 9 left, 3 already in use. They had used one cell significantly during the first night, another partially during the day. That left them 7 fresh cells for the second night and potential third day. The math was tighter now. Marcus made the call. "We're cutting light use by half. 1 headlamp, lowest setting, only for essential tasks. The rest of the time, we're dark." Joel didn't argue. He understood. Light was life. If they ran out of batteries, the psychological impact would be devastating. Darkness wasn't just uncomfortable. It was disorienting, demoralizing. It made you feel like the cold was winning. At 7 p.m., full darkness returned. They sat in their safe zone, wrapped in mylar, backs against the wall, and began the long count toward dawn. The second night was everything they'd feared. The cold was deeper now, more invasive. It had found every weakness in their defense, every gap in their clothing, every thin spot in the insulation. By 9 p.m., both were shivering intermittently, Not violently, but consistently. Their bodies were burning calories to generate heat, and their reserves were running low. They ate more food, another protein bar each, some dried fruit, a handful of nuts. Calories were fuel. Fuel was warmth. At 10 p.m., Joel's shivering intensified. Marcus felt his own core temperature dropping. They were approaching a decision point. "We need active heat," Marcus said quietly. Joel knew what that meant. The second fuel canister. The last one. If they used it now, they'd have nothing left for tomorrow. But if they didn't use it, they risked hypothermia tonight. Marcus weighed the variables. The forecast said the storm would break by mid-morning tomorrow. If that was accurate, they'd have daylight and potentially improving conditions. They could afford to use the last canister now. If the forecast was wrong, he pushed that thought away. "We're doing it," he said. He set up the stove again, this time with more water. He warmed it carefully, monitoring the temperature, then shut off the stove before the water got too hot. They drank slowly, deliberately, letting the warmth spread. Then Marcus did something they'd practiced but never needed before. He filled one of their water bottles with the remaining warm water, sealed it tightly, and placed it against Joel's core, between his base layer and his mid-layer, a makeshift heating element. Joel gasped at the contact. That's good," he said, teeth still chattering. Marcus did the same for himself with a second bottle. The heat wouldn't last long, maybe an hour, but it would buy them time. At 11 p.m., the wind hit a new level of ferocity. The cabin shook. Something outside, glass maybe, or metal, shattered and scattered. Joel flinched. That didn't sound good. Marcus didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Whatever had broken, they couldn't fix it now. They just had to endure. At midnight, Marcus checked their light supply. They'd been disciplined. Only one cell partially used during the evening. 6 cells still fresh, 1 in use. If they made it through the night, when they made it through the night, they'd still have enough light for another day. 3 cells saved. That had been the goal. They were on track. But tracking goals didn't make the cold go away. By 1 a.m., Marcus felt the creeping edges of despair. Not panic, he was too experienced for panic, but a deep, bone-tired weariness, the kind that whispered, "Just stop. Just give up. It's too hard." He recognized it immediately. This was the moment every drill prepared you for, the moment when your mind tried to quit before your body did. He forced himself to speak. "Joel, talk to me. Tell me something." Joel's voice came out of the dark, slow but steady. "Like what?" Marcus didn't care. "Anything. Tell me about the time we got lost on the trail, the one near Glacier." Joel was quiet for a moment. Then he started talking. His voice was soft, almost rambling. But it was there. He talked about the hike, about the wrong turn they'd taken, about how they'd navigated back using the sun and a compass. He talked about being scared, about trusting Marcus, about making it out. Marcus listened, asking questions, keeping Joel engaged. It wasn't about the story. It was about keeping the mind active, keeping the connection alive. Isolation killed as surely as cold. At 2 a.m., they switched roles. Marcus talked, Joel listened. They passed the hours that way, trading words, trading warmth. At 3 a.m., Joel stopped responding. Marcus felt a spike of fear. "Joel." Silence. "Joel." He clicked on the headlamp. Joel's eyes were closed, his breathing shallow but regular. Asleep. Marcus exhaled in relief. Sleep was dangerous in extreme cold. You could slip into hypothermia without waking, but Joel's position was good. His body still wrapped and layered, and they'd been monitoring his condition all night. Marcus made a judgment call. Let him sleep for an hour, then wake him for a check. He clicked off the light and sat in the dark, listening to his brother breathe. At 4 a.m., Marcus woke Joel gently. "Hey, need you to wake up for a minute." Joel stirred, groggy. I'm okay, just tired. Marcus checked him quickly, eyes clear, speech normal, no signs of confusion. Good. Stay awake for a bit, then you can sleep again. They did another round of micro-movements together. It was harder now, their bodies stiff and resistant, but they pushed through. At 5 a.m. the first hints of gray appeared in the window. Joel saw it and actually smiled. We did it, he said quietly. Marcus shook his head. Not yet, but almost. The dawn brought relief, but not warmth. The temperature in the cabin was 32 degrees, just above freezing. The bedroom was maybe 35. They'd lost ground overnight, but they'd held the line. Neither had slipped into hypothermia. Neither had made a critical error. And crucially, they still had light. Marcus counted the batteries again in the pale morning light. 4 cells unused, 2 partially used, 1 nearly depleted. 7 cells total, at various states. Enough for today. Enough for another night if it came to that. 3 cells effectively saved by their discipline. The goal had been met. At 7 a.m., Marcus checked his phone. 1 bar of service, barely hanging on. The forecast had updated. The blizzard warning was lifted. The storm was moving east. Winds would decrease throughout the morning. Roads would begin clearing by early afternoon. Power restoration estimated within 12 to 24 hours. They'd made it. Joel read the screen over his shoulder. We actually did it, he said, and this time Marcus nodded. Yeah, we did. But they weren't out yet. The protocol was clear. You don't break discipline until you're safe. They stayed in their layers. They stayed in the safe zone. They rationed their light. At 9 a.m. they heard it, the distant growl of an engine, then voices, then a knock on the door. Marcus and Joel looked at each other, almost laughing. They'd been so focused on the drill, they'd forgotten other people existed. Marcus went to the main room and opened the door. Standing there were Henderson and 2 other townspeople, all bundled in heavy gear. We came to check on you boys, Henderson said. Power's been out since Tuesday night. Roads just cleared enough to get through. Marcus blinked in the sudden brightness of daylight. Snow was piled 4 feet high against the side of the cabin. The sky was clear, painfully blue, the storm fully past. We're fine, he said. Henderson frowned, looking past him into the dark cabin. You got heat? Fire going? Marcus shook his head. No fire. We use the drill. Henderson stared at him. What drill? Joel appeared behind Marcus, still wrapped in his jacket and mylar. The no-fire drill. We practiced for this. Henderson looked between them, his expression shifting from confusion to something like disbelief. You've been in there since Tuesday night with no heat? Marcus nodded. We had some warm fluids, but no sustained fire. We managed our insulation, rationed our light, kept our core temps stable. Henderson shook his head slowly. And you're both okay? They were exhausted, cold, and hungry for real food. But okay. We're okay, Joel confirmed. One of the other townspeople, a woman named Sarah, looked at them with new respect. How? Marcus shrugged. Practice, repetition, knowing what to do before you need to do it. Henderson was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I'm sorry I laughed. Marcus smiled. Don't be. Now you know it works. The town's attitude shifted after that. Word spread about the brothers who'd survived 2 nights without fire, who'd kept their lights on when everyone else was burning through generators and firewood, who'd proven that discipline and preparation could beat raw panic. People started asking questions. How did they do it? Could they teach it? Marcus and Joel didn't gloat. They just shared what they knew, the layering strategies, the movement techniques, the rationing discipline, the hypothermia warning signs. Some people listened. Some still thought they were extreme, but no one laughed anymore. 3 weeks later, Marcus was at the general store buying batteries, always buying batteries, and Henderson waved him over. Got something for you, he said, pulling a small package from under the counter. Inside were 6 high-quality lithium AA batteries and a note. For the next drill. H. Marcus looked up, surprised. Henderson shrugged. Figure if you're going to keep doing this crazy thing, might as well do it right. Marcus grinned. Appreciate it. As he walked out, he realized something. They'd proven more than just a survival technique. They'd proven that preparation wasn't paranoia, discipline wasn't weakness, and sometimes the thing everyone mocks is the thing that saves your life. The cabin still stands 3 miles outside Ridgefield. The wood stove still sits in the corner, reliable and ready. But once a month, Marcus and Joel still run their drill. No fire, no stove, no candles. Just insulation, layers, and the knowledge that when the worst happens, they'll be ready. Not because they're afraid, because they're prepared. And in the brutal cold of a Montana winter, that difference is everything. They keep their 3 cells warm and their lights burning, because they've learned the most important lesson survival can teach. Panic kills faster than cold ever will. Calm saves lives, and calm comes from practice.
If you're inspired by stories of real survival, practical preparedness, and the discipline that keeps people alive in extreme conditions, this channel brings you more true accounts of winter endurance, cold weather skills, and the human capacity to adapt when nature tests us. These aren't fantasies. They're lessons learned in the hardest classroom there is. Hit subscribe to join a community that values knowledge, respects the cold, and understands that survival isn't luck. It's practice.
The next storm is coming. The question is, will you be ready?